Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here, a YouTube channel where I take a look at an extremely wide variety of different gaming platforms, from the celebrated, the hated, to the downright obscure. By this point in time, we have looked at all sorts on here. Today we are once again going to be dipping our toe into the world of Atari hardware history. In the world of the information superhighway, we consistently hear factoids about the Atari VCS and the Atari Jaguar and even the Atari Lynx. However, some of the many other platforms the company have produced seem to go somewhat under the radar. One of the many examples of this is the XEGS, which is of course the very subject of this video. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of the Atari XE Game System. Yeah. We shall start today's story off way back in 1977, after the release of the now iconic Atari VCS, the world's first ever games console to reach a true pop culture level of status. Interestingly, development for a machine to supersede this platform began development as soon as the humble 2600 was shipped. At the time of release, the people of Atari forecast that their little wood-panelled box would only have a lifespan of about 3 years, so the company would have to evolve with the times in order to remain relevant. To be able to do so, Atari set off to create the most powerful machine they could muster. However, midway through this development cycle, something happened. A little something known as the home computer revolution began to kick off. This new era of technology was ushered in with what Byte magazine called the Trinity of 1977. This Trinity consisted of the Apple II, the TRS-80 Model 1 and the Commodore PET, all of which became common during the 1980s. These devices, known as microcomputers, were marketed to consumers to be the first affordable and accessible computers which were intended for the use of a single non-technical user. If you know much about this era, you will be fully aware that this home computing big bang resulted in a range of different products being developed down the line, and platforms such as the ZX Spectrum, BBC Micro, Commodore 64 and Amstrad CPC 464 are still highly celebrated in my country to this very day. So with this new wave taking over, it was common sense that Atari would want a slice of the pie too. By December of 1978, Atari announced the release of both the Atari 400 and Atari 800, and were both 8-bit machines primarily designed and marketed as computers for children. Both of these platforms were successfully on the market by late 1979. The 400 featured a simplistic design with tactile membrane keyboards to avoid both food damage and children eating them, which is a double selling point for the device. The system could run both cartridges and cassette-based hardware, and first began to be shipped with 8K of memory. However, later models offered 16K. The 800 was a similar device, however, with 8K of RAM, which could be expanded with up to 48K. And most importantly, this version of the device offered a proper keyboard. Now we are playing with power. Moving forward, starting in 1982, Atari would release more members to their 8-bit family of home computers, such as the XL line, and by 1985 would even move into the 16-bit realm with the release of the Atari 520 ST. However, obviously all of these platforms are subjects for future videos. Speaking of the Atari ST system, its development was aided with the help of ex-Commodore engineers, who were employed as a result of Commodore founder Jack TrAmiel purchasing the Atari Consumer Division at an extremely low price and forming the Atari Corporation. This deal was partially aided due to the damage the company had suffered during the North American Atari crash of 1983. At the dawn of this new era for the company, Mr. TrAmiel cancelled most of Atari's current research, design and prototype projects, including the up-and-coming high-end models of the XL range. A further change that was made was that the low-end XL models were transformed and redesigned into a new line of 8-bit platforms, known as the XE series. In 1985, alongside the ST, the world saw the launch of the Atari 65 XE and 130 XE, which both took visual cues from the ST itself. Whilst the ST was targeted to be sold to wealthier Western consumers, TrAmiel realised that there was still a demand for cheaper 8-bit software, which he had accumulated in abundance as a result of the takeover. The low-cost XC machines were ideal products to sell in countries that had recently removed themselves from the Warsaw Pact. Being originally from Poland, Jack maintained strong links to Eastern Europe, making this move for Atari fairly smooth. Moving ahead once more, now into 1987, it was very clear that Nintendo, with their Nintendo Entertainment System, was now dominating North America, a region where Atari were once king, with their VCS platform. With this market now fully rejuvenated, TrAmiel and co decided that they wanted one more slice of that sweet console market pie. The only question left really was how was this going to be achieved? So, after mulling the whole thing over, a plan was concocted. Much like everyone else in the technology industry, Atari had noticed some of Nintendo's marketing strategies. The NES was primarily marketed as a toy, rather than a games console, which was further emphasised by the fact that it was packaged with both Rob the Robot and the Zapper gun. The item was highly sought after by all children within the region. TrAmiel though also surmised that although games are fantastic fun and highly attractive to children, that parents on the other hand may be more interested in procuring a piece of tech that can also help their children to learn at home. With both of these ideas in mind, combined with the fact that the Atari XE range was not quite the success the company had envisioned, the idea for the Atari XEGS was born, repurposing XE systems as the Atari XE Game System. The Atari XEGS was based on the 65 XE model. XEGSs were compatible with Atari's existing range of 8-bit computer software. The platform was able to function as both a standalone console and a fully operational computer. In addition to this, the platform also had released a bespoke designed keyboard that connected straight up to the console. The XEGS was available in two packages. Firstly, there was the basic set, which only came with a joystick, and of course a deluxe set, which was paired up with a joystick, the keyboard previously mentioned, and much like the NES, the platform's very own light gun. It is of note that in the console realm, in addition to this system, Atari still had their VCS on sale aimed at the more budget end of the market, and the 7800 already attempting to go head to head with the NES. Amongst all of this as well, back in 1982 Atari had launched the 5200 and failed, which was basically just a consoleized version of the Atari 400 we mentioned earlier. The XEGS differed though, as it was positioned as a games console / home computer hybrid machine. The system was designed to function as both an ideal computer for beginners as well as a sophisticated games console. It was of hope that this new platform would increase Atari's current console share while simultaneously improving on sales of Atari's aging range of 8-bit family computers. Keeping all of this in mind, Atari were hoping that the platform would be attractive to both retailers and software developers alike as a platform that would be worth supporting. Upon the system's shipment, the platform came with a built-in 8-bit version of the game Missile Command, and bundled with Flight Simulator 2, with the keyboard component and the game Bug Hunt, which is compatible with the light gun. Since the XEGS is compatible with older 8-bit software, most of the games released for the XEGS were simply older titles rebadged. In some cases, Atari just stuck new stickers over the front of old boxes for the Atari 400 and 800 to indicate that the games were playable on this new platform. Unlike the 5200 prior, the XEGS was sold on both sides of the Atlantic. Amongst all of this, Atari UK marketing manager Daryl Steele stated that the XEGS sold steadily through the catalogues and offered a nice profit for Atari, meaning that at least to some degree, TrAmiel's plan was working. In terms of the games library, I previously mentioned that the XEGS was backwards compatible with software from previous Atari computers. However, it is of note that there are also 32 XE branded games available which were playable without the need for a keyboard. These games came in blue boxes, as opposed to the regular silver boxes like most games available on the system. Ultimately, as we know, the XEGS would not go on to become a world beater, and certainly in terms of sales or gameplay quality, never matched the likes of the NES or Master System. To many people, even to this very day, the XGS comes across as a somewhat confusing little platform, which lacks the quality games library of the console competition, as well as a lack in quality to match many of the home computers available at the time either. In some ways, the XEGS is the jack of all trades and the master of none. But then again, when you really look at the situation, in many ways it did the exact job TrAmiel & Co wanted the platform to do, which is why it is hard to look at the XEGS as a complete failure. Mr. TrAmiel acquired Atari, including the huge inventory of 8-bit hardware, and then repackaged and repurposed it, allowing Atari to successfully sell 250,000 XEGSs, which reduced Atari's old inventory significantly. So, whilst the XEGS certainly was not a trailblazer or anything particularly special, the system served its purpose for Atari and offered an all-in-one product that was somewhat of a middle ground between the majority of games consoles and microcomputers available on the market. So, long live the Atari XE Game System. Yeah. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the history of the Atari XEGS. Let me know in the comment section which system you would like to hear me talk about next. If you like this video, then there are plenty more like this on the channel for you to view and enjoy. Also, a massive thank you to Kieran from Laird's Lair for hooking me up with some great info on this platform. He will always be my #1 consultant when it comes to Atari history. Finally, my channel Top Gaming Man is funded by the fantastic support and donations I receive from my Patreon benefactors, who continue to help me propel this channel forward. So, shoutouts to Carl Johnson, Shizuka Kobayashi, Greg Hooper, Lawrence C, Synth Spaces, Kevin Verhaley, Andrew Bazansky, Edward O'Reilly, Tom Elliott, Mark S. Hines, The Gaming Muso, Quang DX, Spudmatt B, JD Robbins, Michael Baker, and of course all of my other patrons as well. Thank you for changing my life and helping this channel grow. Ta-ta and farewell.